Hey, what's going on, everybody? CitizenSnipz here with Level1Gaming.com. Proud to give you guys some exclusive interview content here. I've got Jake Caboose McDonald, one of the star fraggers for Envy VALORANT, just coming off of big premier tournament over at First Strike. So I wanted to sit down with him, get his thoughts on kind of his esports journey, as well as the state of Valorant right now and how things are looking for the future. So Caboose, thank you so much for giving me some time, man. I know you're probably just coming out of scrims and everything, so I'll try and get out of here pretty quick so you can get to your rest, man. But how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. It's my pleasure to be here. Yeah, long day of scrim has been going really well. We're trying to get back on the right track after First Strike. So yeah, doing really well. Awesome,
man. I'm really glad to hear that. So to get things started for us, I guess we should kind of start at the beginning. Everything likes to move chronologically, right? I know if memory serves, I was doing my research earlier. I think you've kind of been in the more professional esports scene since around 2014. Starting in Counter-Strike, as a lot of current Valorant players have. So tell me a little bit about kind of like what it was for you coming onto the scene, and then kind of when Valorant came out, what was it about the game that kind of caught that twinkle in your eye and made you decide to leave Counter-Strike that you had poured all this time into and try something different?
So yeah, Counter-Strike, I played Counter-Strike pretty much my whole life. I started playing in 2003 with 1.6.
Okay.
So Counter-Strike's always been a big game for me. And then when Counter-Strike Go came out in 2012, of course I hopped on that. I bought it the very first day it came out.
Nice.
Knowing, this is a game I love as a kid.
Right.
Grinded that for a while and then started competing. It was in August of 2013.
Okay.
So I played on pretty much one team that entire time up until 2016. I was playing around this time in like open and intermediate with a couple seasons of main, nothing too crazy. 2016 we had the pro offer from Selfless, so that was like the big shot.
Right.
So yeah, we went pro, and then that lasted around 9 months, and everything else was kind of downhill from there. It was pretty much just all MDL, a couple playoff seasons, even like an MDL final, and then a lot of relegated seasons. So the last couple years of Counter-Strike started feeling really stale. There was no progress. I was doing the same thing over and over, The game doesn't really change much.
Right.
And I always had like certain complaints of like gunplay and mechanics in Counter-Strike. I hated how spraying was the only thing that I was like viable and stuff like that. So Valorant,
right.
When Valorant dropped, I originally thought like I would hate this game. I actually remember like the first like 5 or 6 rounds, I was thinking like, man, this is the worst game ever. Like all these spells and stuff like that.
Right.
But this game felt like it had all the things I was complaining about in Counter-Strike for a while. So for example, you can actually tap and like burst. Like it's a viable way to shoot. Everything's not just like who can control their spray. So there's like accuracy in the shots. The movement is much slower. You're never gonna die to some guy like flying with a pistol that one-shots you. It seems like everything that I didn't like about CS was fixed in this game, and it just felt like better.
Okay.
So yeah, transitioning into Valorant, it was super sick. I started liking the game after the first couple days, and now I can't even play Counter-Strike.
Right.
Like extremely bored. It's insane.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I do. I kind of went through a similar experience. So I told you, before the interview started, 1.6 was my jam when I was a kid as well. I kind of fell out of Counter-Strike for a few years. I never really played Go or anything like that. And I had kind of moved more. Overwatch was more my kind of competitive multiplayer game of the moment when Valorant came out. So it kind of blended those two worlds together. People maintain, it's like this healthy mix, and it really is. It's 90% Counter-Strike with a little bit of Overwatch kind of sprinkled on top.
Yeah.
But I will say it's rare for me to have played a game, from beta to launch that felt as polished as Valorant did.
Yeah.
I might disagree with you on one thing. I don't know if it's just my bad luck, but I seem to catch stray frenzy bullets at a full sprint to the face all day long.
But every once in a while.
But it does feel relatively good. And one thing that you can comment on as well, because I know you have a much better grasp of this than I do. It seems, at least from a player's perspective, that Riot has been very, very responsive, both kind of in timeliness and in the measure of their actions in terms of balancing or tweaking the game when people say that there's an issue. So kind of tell me what that's like from a professional's perspective and how that differs to how things were for you in Counter-Strike.
Yeah, so that's another thing that immediately I noticed with Riot was Valve is never patching any like broken updates. Like it seems like they'll just throw anything at you. Like for example, the Krieg, the SG553. was like insanely broken in Counter-Strike. It
Yeah.
completely took over the meta. The same thing with the AUG before that. And it like took away the identity of the game. You know, you're just scoping in, there's no recoil or anything like that.
Mhm.
And it took them like 2.5 years of like that meta, or some like 2 years of that meta. Like I can't even imagine how I did it. And
That
now
is rough, yeah.
I'm playing Valorant, and like there's updates every couple days. Like I
Mhm.
remember when the game just dropped, every agent was getting changes. Like Raze had 2 nades and stuff like that.
Mhm.
They got fixed that really quickly. So I mean, it's night and day between Riot and Valve, and I'm super grateful to have a company like that in my game now.
Definitely, yeah. And I know, like, again, that matters much more for y'all when you're like, this is your livelihood you're competing for. So if there's a gun that's not functioning properly or an ability that's broken and it's too easily abused, that impacts your ability to make your paycheck and make your living. Whereas for me, it's just frustrating me sitting at home yelling at my computer screen. So it's nice that they have taken that approach so far, and I hope they do keep that momentum going as the game continues to evolve. And I guess we can kind of we'll go ahead and get this part out of the way, because I know I mentioned to you before you're getting asked about this left and right, so we'll tackle it now and move on past it. First Strike, Valorant First Strike, NA First Strike did just happen, kind of global wide major tournament. I think truly the first real glimpse where it seemed like we had every major team was there. We weren't missing one or two for whatever reason. So I think it gave us the best glimpse of what competitive Valorant's going to be like at the highest level going forward. I guess we'll start with kind of the structure and the qualifying leading up to First Strike as well. How do you think Riot handled that, and do you think there's anything that should have been done differently leading up to the main event, so to speak?
Leading up to the main event, I thought it was pretty cool. I liked all the qualifiers. I don't think 2 qualifiers was too many. I think 2 qualifiers is good. Having an open and close, I didn't have any complaints with that.
Okay.
More of the issues came with, I think if you have that many qualifiers over that many months, that your tournament really shouldn't be an 8-team single elim.
Right.
I think if you want to have a single elim, it has to be 16 teams. And I get that they want to have like epic storylines for their matchups and stuff like that.
Right.
But you can still have even better stories in a lower bracket, you know, and a lot more matchups too. Because a lot of teams, you know, they've played with each other at some point in the past, so there's going to be storylines for pretty much every match. So
True.
The more matches, the better, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And by kind of not letting some of those other, lesser known teams sneak in, you lose that ability for like a potential Cinderella story, because you never know what's going to happen. So I do agree with you there. I actually, we recorded our podcast the night before First Strike started last week, and I misspoke a ton because it kind of crept up on me, and I was like, oh, I'm looking up and I see the first day of matches, and I'm like, that's a stacked schedule for a first day of matches. Like usually this is a farther down the bracket kind of stuff. So it completely took me by surprise that it was, this is it, just these 8 teams, and then single elim on top of that too. I think that's probably the first thing I would change, is I feel like you guys definitely deserve a double elim bracket in that kind of situation, because it is so tense and because the competition's so high. We'll move on to the event itself. Round 1, you guys took on Renegades. I think we're the first to really play Icebox at the highest level. And you kind of Mortals, sorry. Not Renegades. My bad. I'm getting my matches mixed up. Against Immortals. You guys looked really, really good on Icebox. Immortals kind of took the brute force approach on A there, and then I was glad when you guys took over on attack, you took the more kind of, I like to call it the big-brained approach, of kind of balancing your, trying to control mid and deciding when to rotate where. So you guys basically put on a clinic. Yeah, right. We had to see what it's like. So tell me, I guess we'll start with your thoughts on Icebox, because in ladder it catches a lot of flack. Everybody seems to try and want to dodge it, but I kind of enjoy the map, to be honest with you. So I want to see what your thoughts on it are and how the team feels about it.
Yeah, so I think the changes they recently made, we've scrimmed on them a little bit. I think those changes are really good. It takes off a lot of the really awkward fights in the map, specifically on top of like the yellow boxes at B and the deep area at A, whatever people call it. I think everyone calls it different stuff. But I think the changes are really good, and the map is definitely growing on me. It's definitely up there in my top 3. It's not my favorite, but I definitely don't hate it the most. I can name more maps that I dislike than it. So I think it's a good map. I think the only thing they should work on now is the B area is still a little clunky. There's still like a lot of the angles in the tube and stuff like that. There's angles from the kitchen. I think there's too many angles there. I'm not sure exactly what they can do about it, but I think if they fix that up, it'd be a really solid map for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, and I do. I guess one of the reasons I like Icebox is, you're. I think you're one of the few duelists out there who seems to prefer the Vandal in most situations to the Phantom. And I view, for me personally, in my limited knowledge, I view Icebox as the perfect Vandal map because 9 times out of 10 the engagements are coming at a longer distance, and that's where the Vandal really starts to shine over the Phantom when you have those longer range engagements versus kind of the close corner peeking and spray kind of combat. So I insta-lock Vandal every time I'm on Icebox, and I feel good about it, and then I get rewarded for it. And the changes they did make to A do look really nice, but like you said, for sure, I think B still needs a little bit of work to be done, but definitely a solid map to start.
Couple angles.
So you guys pretty much cleaned up Immortals rather quickly. A nice, clean, easy 2-0. Looking great, looking good. On to the next day where you guys face TSM. And kind of tell me about... So, I guess I'll let you give your perspective first on how you think that day went, and I'll tell you kind of what it looked like from a fan's perspective with my magical spectator powers that let me see everything.
Cool. Yeah. I think going into the TSM match, we definitely just weren't having a good day as a team. I think it happens to everyone for every team because it happened even in CS, where you'll just have like very off days. You know, even our warm-up scrim, we went into our warm-up scrim and it did not go well at all.
Okay.
It was a pretty bad sign. And then the match came around, we were making a lot of mistakes that we don't normally make. The communication wasn't up there. Really, the biggest. I'd say the biggest thing we messed up on was our post plants, and I think that actually lost us the game. On split, we had the spike planted like 8 rounds or something like that, and we only got 3 or something winning the pistol. So I think we were just having an off day. We could have been playing better for sure, and I think if we have that matchup on a good day for us, I think it could go differently for sure.
Definitely, yeah, and I think even TSM kind of said the same thing in their post-match interview. You know, they said that you guys didn't seem like yourselves that day. And in games like this, where timing and kind of when you peek or when you check what corner is so essential, it seemed like you guys it never went your way, unfortunately. Like you'd clear the right corner, but then as soon as you looked away, that's when they'd peek, and you just kind of had that bad timing following you around all day. But I will say the thing that stood out to me the most, and I will give TSM credit for this, I don't know if they just talked to each other before the match and said, we're not rotating on defense until Spike is planted. But holy crap, man, those guys were absolutely resolute when you get onto one site, get a couple picks, and you'd think normally everybody starts to rotate at this point. And they just didn't budge, man. And I'm sitting there watching the spectator camera like, how's this happening? Yeah. And then you guys make the call. Like, FNS is usually perfect with his rotates and the timing and everything. And it was the first match I've ever watched you guys where I'd had to like be screaming at my screen like, no, go back to A, go back to A. And it blew my mind, man. So that was really wild. But I definitely do think, given another taste against those guys, I think you guys will definitely have a different showing. And that's kind of brings us back to why they need to have double elimination in that tournament, because you can't let somebody have a bad day ruin their whole tournament. You gotta give them that chance to redeem themselves, at least I feel like. So first strike was not the result you wanted, but still just getting there and kind of what you guys showcased that first day, especially, I think was a huge sign for the Envy team. And we'll first strike's now behind us. We're looking forward, but I will say one of the things that I was most excited about going into the tournament and the qualifiers as well, was the first real look at you guys kind of quote unquote in your final form, so to speak, after the acquisition of Crashies and Food. I being a fan of Envy and Valorant, when T1 announced their release, I was like, man, it's kind of a questionable decision, but hey, it's their org. I'm sure they know what they're doing. And in the back of my mind was that voice going, it'd be pretty sweet if Envy could pick them up, man. And sure enough, a couple weeks later, that announcement gets made. And tell me kind of what was that like for you guys behind the scenes? Like, was this was it a surprise to you, or were you involved in the talks for who we should get and who we should go after, and what impact you felt it had on your team as a whole?
Yeah, so it was definitely a shock that was even possible.
Yeah.
I think our whole team personally thought those were the best 2 players on that roster. So to hear that they were like cut and they didn't leave themselves was
Yeah,
like,
that was pretty wild.
I was like, very confused. Yeah, so we definitely jumped at that opportunity. They're the scariest players I played against when we play against T1 in matches. They're the only ones popping off. They're the ones that are the scariest. So I was just super excited. I definitely gave my opinion that I thought this was a good move and that this will make us better in the long run. And I think it's working out great. The experience they bring to the team, all the ideas they have, including just the the individual star power.
Right.
It really just upped our team a whole nother level, I think.
Yeah, I will say again, acknowledge my bias that I am an Envy fan. I always like to throw it out there. But it's when I look at kind of total squad rosters for every person that makes up the 5, I feel like you guys have the overall strongest roster out there. I think every single one of you guys has that pop-off potential. FNS's brain is so massive, I don't know how he fits it in his head. So if you know the secret, you can tell me later after. I don't want you to reveal any trade secrets, but if you know how he does it, man, please let me know. But yeah, so I'm excited to watch you guys going forward. We did get a little bit of a taste in First Strike of the newest agent, Skye. Didn't see her too heavily used, which makes sense because she is so relatively new. I'm sure a lot of you guys didn't get the chance to work her into scrims that much, and you want to go with what you know in a game like this for sure. So tell me kind of a little bit about what you think about her potential going forward, where you think she might fit in, either in certain compositions or on certain maps, and how you guys might plan to use her going forward.
Okay, yeah. So as of this right now, most teams either run a Breach or a Sova. I think she fits that role perfectly. She kind of just has the better aspects of Breach, and then like the Wolf is basically a Sova drone.
Right.
So I think she's strong on that aspect, and I think Icebox is her best map for sure.
Okay.
I think she's really bad compared to Breach and Sova on the other maps.
Okay.
Her flashes seem hard to get off perfectly. They die really quickly, so you have to control them really well, and you have to pop them at the exact right time, which could be tricky in a lot of situations. Whereas Breach can, just look at a wall and shoot it through, and their entire team is blind.
Right.
Yeah. So I think the Wolf is also worse than a Sova drone. The Sova drone gives you the ping, can see a lot more. So I think she's just like she's a mix of those agents, but she's not very good at being that mix.
Okay.
The heal is the only thing that really sets her out, and the heal is great. But I don't think it makes up for the difference that you can just run a Sova or you can just run a Breach and pretty much just have a better agent in general. And not to mention the ult is super buggy, especially on Icebox with like elevation.
Yep.
The Wolves will like get stuck.
Yeah.
Stop running at you.
I've seen that a lot on Haven, especially on defense. Like if you pop her ult kind of in B area, they'll try and go towards B window and they'll get stuck on those steps leading up to window and just kind of circle around for a bit. So yeah. I will say in her initial trailer, I was a bit nervous because I thought, so there were two things I weren't clear on, whether you got POV of the bird when you used it, which I'm glad was not the case because I felt like that would make it too broken. And then how difficult the bird would be to shoot, which it looks like they gave it a pretty generous hitbox in retrospect. So I think those went a long way towards making her not as scary as she initially seemed. But yeah, like you said, I think going to be niche usage. So it's interesting that you say Icebox. I may start to practice my Icebox a little bit with some Skye now. And I know kind of we've got, it seems like when you look at in terms of utility, there's not any real gaps. You've got hero or agents that are good at stalling. You've got agents that are good at entries. Is there anything that you feel is missing from the game currently in terms of kind of a style of agent?
I can't think of anything missing. In terms of the meta, I really liked having healers in the meta. So now that teams aren't really running Sage or Skye, the healer aspect kind of faded, but I always thought it was pretty cool because you don't always have known info. You shoot somebody to like 10 health in the round and then they could get a heal. It's just another aspect you have to keep track of. I like all these things, these little details you have to keep track of. I think it's pretty cool.
Definitely, and I do think that adds another level of differentiation versus like a Counter-Strike where there is no healing of any sort. So I like to see it kind of be unique in its own way like that. So with that being said, do you think so Skye will kind of count, but mostly Sage is the primary healer if you're looking to add that into your team composition. What do you think would be the necessary adjustments to her to make her more viable or see her usage rate go up?
For Sage, you're talking about?
Yes.
I think the wall change has to go back to what it was before,
Okay.
where it is like low HP when you place it now.
Hmm.
That nerf pretty much just killed her completely. As well as the heal, it's not like a full 100 HP heal now. I think
Right.
that it easily should be. I don't think it was broken to begin with. I think the only thing they need to change was, honestly, just change her back to the way she was. I don't think she was broken at all. She wasn't really the agent that the pros were complaining about, which is why it's weird that she kept getting targeted.
Right.
People were complaining about Raze and Jet specifically back then, so it's
Yeah.
weird. Sage kept getting targeted with the nerfs.
The,
I
the
don't think she deserved any of them.
the only thing I can imagine is just based on pure usage rate alone, because she was pretty much a must pick in every round. And I guess maybe if that's not what they wanted, they may have gone a little too hard on the nerfs. But yeah, I definitely think you're right there. She didn't seem that broken, especially because you had to play her more passively. She didn't really gain you advantages in going aggro or anything like that. And so being a duelist main yourself, I know you're kind of a Raze Reyna with a little bit of Phoenix mixed in there as well. My intuition tell me Reyna's probably your favorite. Am I right on that?
Yeah, Reyna's probably the most fun. I'd argue that Raze, though, on some maps, could be a lot of fun. Like Raze on Icebox, I think is my favorite
Okay.
map to play in the game, specifically on offense.
Okay.
But other than that, I think Reyna is probably the most fun for me.
And what about her kit do you think really kind of drew you to her and made her kind of take that primary role for you, I guess?
Yeah, so in Counter-Strike, I was always known as a good mechanically skilled player.
Mhm.
I wouldn't always play the situations perfectly. I wouldn't always have the smartest ideas, but I would always be able to hit shots. I would always, have successful entry uh, percent rate or whatever.
Right.
And I think that I just kept wanting to play this style. I think this was what I was best at, is just getting kills. In Valorant, I think I have a much bigger brain for the game, since you can read it a lot easier,
Mhm.
since there's different agents instead of just 5 players on a map.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest.
So, with regards to Raina, she's a personal favorite of mine as well. I'm very terrible at playing passively, which is not good for my skill set, but it fits my mentality at least. So I do enjoy Raina because she does enable that kind of more aggressive play style. You will get complaints about her being broken or overpowered, and generally speaking, the ability to self-heal and kind of phase in and out to get those peaks is very, very powerful for sure. But I think what makes all of that okay is that you have to get the kills first. So she doesn't enable or reward you for doing nothing or being passive. If you don't get that pick, you're not getting any value out of your abilities and even your ultimate. So I think that's what makes it balanced in the end and kind of justifies her on the roster. So I do like seeing her more in play now, especially when I get to watch it from your field of view. I try and take notes, man, but my mouse hand doesn't seem to work quite as well as yours does. So with what's being presented so far, obviously we'd like to see some more maps. They're still kind of lacking in map pool. I think that's one of the largest areas I'd like to see them focus. But as far as agents go, we kind of talked about you don't think there's any necessary gaps out there. Maybe just kind of offering alternatives for things would be good. But is there anything that you absolutely do not want to see? Like, for example, if I see another AoE damage agent like Raze, I might cry and just kind of curl up in a corner. So
Yeah, so I definitely do not want to see tank characters.
Oh,
Anything with more
I didn't even think
HP, a
about that.
shield, something like that.
okay, yeah.
So I know there's tanks in Overwatch, and I know Valorant likes to experiment, because some of the agents they came out with are very bold. Like Killjoy's ult, Reyna, like the ideas in general, like I couldn't believe it when I read it.
Yeah.
So I don't want them to get a little ambitious and try any tank stuff out, but yeah, definitely
Okay.
want to see that.
And then let's see. As far as maps go, let's see. I guess we're probably due for another three bomb site map. I would imagine will probably be next on the books. But do you have a favorite map and kind of well, I guess we'll go your most favorite map, least favorite map, and kind of tell us a little bit about why each one lands where it is.
Cool, yeah. So I think we'll go from the top of the list. Bind is definitely on top for me. I
Same.
like there's a lot of map control, stuff like that you can do. You can get aggressive. It pretty much just has it all. You can run fakes with teleporters, so it's just a really good map
Yeah.
in general. At number 2, I actually like Split the second most.
Okay.
It's like not many people like Split, but for me, I think it's it's really fun to play because from my perspective as a player, on defense, the angles are really one-sided. You get a
Hmm.
lot of clean rounds, a lot of 3K spray down, stuff like that.
Right.
So it's a lot of fun to play. And then same thing on your offense, you know how hard it is to win these rounds. So whenever you get like a nice 2K entry, it feels really impactful. Same
Okay.
thing, you'll have like a lot of comebacks. You can be down 10-2 and you still feel like you have the game because you got 2 rounds. So split's definitely up there for me for that reason.
Okay.
Number three, I would give it to oh, so yeah, I'll say Ascent.
Okay.
Um, Pretty simple map. It's definitely the map that you default the most on. It's the only map
Hmm.
where you really have to take a lot of control in the middle area. So I think in that aspect, it's pretty fun altogether. There's a lot of good op spots, stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways to play the map. So I think it's pretty cool. It's not my favorite, but I definitely don't hate it.
Okay.
And then Icebox is my fourth.
Okay.
I think Icebox is pretty fun. Since it's new, especially, there's a lot of cool things you can create by yourself in a server.
Hmm.
Especially since I play Raze, like I said earlier, it was really fun. Using the blast packs, there's a lot of
Oh yeah, yeah.
a
A
lot
lot
of
of.
cool ways you can use your blast packs on the map. So yeah, I'd probably make that my fourth favorite map. Of course, there's things that need to be changed about it. B site specifically, I think is a little clunky. Even the kitchen area seems very defender sided to the point that I don't think teams will ever walk up that tube into the
Yeah.
kitchen. So all in all, fun map, but I think there should be some changes. And fifth, I really don't like Haven. I never have.
Okay.
A lot of people like it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad map. It's just I don't really enjoy it. The three bomb sites, you really can only take map control at A. That's kind of where all the map control fights are, unless you like walk down mid or something like that. But I feel like there's not too many different ways to play the map. It's just do you take A first or you take mid and then go take A after? It's kind of seems like every team plays that way.
Okay.
That's the only thing you really need to do. But yeah, that's the 5 maps for me personally.
Okay. And I'm definitely, I agree with you on Bind 100%. It's always been my favorite. I thought
Oh yeah.
not only was the teleporter mechanic such a cool new idea to incorporate into a game like this, but the way it's set up, it works really well. So I was really happy with that. I hope whatever new maps they bring in start to incorporate that teleporter mechanic a little bit more, because I do think there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. I'm definitely I've been a split hater, so I have to disagree with you on the second one there. I just especially at my skill level, if you don't start on defender side, it just feels so super oppressive. And once you dig down into that hole, especially playing with randoms in comp, they're all tilted, so you get tilted, and then nothing good ever happens after that. But I'd say aside from that, I'm pretty much there with you on kind of the map rankings. And I guess the final thing I want to chat with you a little bit about gets a little more kind of deeper into the strategy of the game itself, especially at the professional level. When Valorant first came out, it was kind of like a Wild West. There wasn't really a set meta. You'd see a lot of the same team comps just because people figured, all these agents are really strong, and there wasn't that much to choose from anyway. But I think we're now starting to see a general shift, and I think your Icebox against Immortals was the perfect showcase of it. Their attack approach was, we're just going to try and brute force A every single time. And you used to see a lot of that kind of approach where it was like, we'll full stack steamroll a site if we can, the old Counter-Strike rush B. And it seemed like that's starting to be less and less effective, which I really enjoy. And we are shifting towards a more slower Counter-Strike-ish kind of meta where it becomes more about gradual map control, making your rotations at the last second to try and gather as much information as possible. How do you feel about that gradual change, and is that something that you think is going to continue to dominate, or do you think there's going to be kind of a balance back and forth between the two play styles?
Yeah, so I think back then people just didn't really have the ideas of how to play the game. They're still experimenting with new agents and stuff like that. So the easiest way to win was to just, send 5 guys to a site. Everybody just throws a little bit of their utility, and then you hope for the best.
Right.
Now that people know like what timings are on the maps, where people could be at certain times, how people run defaults, there's a lot more options, and there's a lot more like mind games that goes on in the map. For example, like Ascent. I remember teams like never really played mid at all on their offense. They would just kind of like exec A or exec B. And now, since teams have a lot more protocols, like these execs are getting held a lot more because I'll shoot the dart, and then okay, you flash, and then this is all like set before their games.
Right.
So it doesn't really work as much anymore. You kind of like have to, you know, work your picks, work your op around, try to take map control, and then, you know, occasionally a couple rounds a half, you throw up like a rush or like an exec off the bat. But I think teams are just too good at stopping it now.
Right.
To try to rely on that style.
Awesome, man. And is that something that is that the way you'd prefer to play? Is that what you think is better for the game as a whole?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot that happens in the mid rounds that in Valorant that, especially people that are new to the game, don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it's kind of like where the split second decision, like decisions that will win the round. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
You know, you make a slight decision and then it wins you the round. You know, if you're just execing at the start of the round, that doesn't really happen. But yeah, I think that's where the interesting mind games come in, is the mid round.
Awesome, man. Yeah, and that's, I think, from a spectator's perspective, you know, you love to see the good rush round every now and then just for kind of a change of pace and to keep the enemy team on their toes. But I think watching those mind games, watching your decision making, that's where you truly start to see, you know, you guys shine. And it's mechanical skill is always impressive in my eyes, but there's something about blending that with the strategy is where it really starts to take off. And I think Valorant allows for a lot more creativity there than we've been able to see in a lot of other games in the past. So I'm really excited to see what you guys can do, man. I think Envy squad is looking fierce. And I'm chomping at the bit for more tournaments, man. I'm ready to see you guys play some more. So Caboose, thanks so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to watching you and the guys tackle some more tournaments in the future. And hopefully the next time you and I sit down to do one of these interviews, it can be a great big victory celebration and we can take our time rubbing it in everybody else's faces.
Yes, 100%. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming, everybody. Do check out on the screen there. You'll see his Twitch and his Twitter. Go give the man a follow. Check him out. Very good for educational purposes as well. Definitely want to show some love. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the content. Keep your eyes peeled on lv1gaming.com. We'll have more coming for you every single day.